Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's webinar. We're really happy to welcome Jackie Kelly-Pemberton of Pemdale Farms, this year's Environmental Stewardship Award winner. We're really happy that she could join us this evening. Just before we get started, we have a few small little details. And to start us off, I'd like to thank you to Ontario's TESA sponsor, RBC. They have been the sponsor of this award for many years now, long before I even started at BFO. And so they just wanted to join us this evening and recognize their sponsorship, as well as to congratulate Jackie and Steve as this year's award winners. And we look forward to working with RBC for many more years into the future on this. So thank you once again, RBC, for your continued support on this. With that as well, TESA applications are now open. So if you know of anyone interested or who might be deserving of this award, I invite you to reach out to myself or Leanne Wormley in the office, and we can give you more details for this. Applications and nominations are due July 1st, but there generally is some extension on it. So if you know of anyone interested, feel free to reach out to them and let them know that the applications are open now, and it's a great opportunity to be recognized or to recognize someone within your area who really has gone forward and made some advancements on their farm in regards to environmental stewardship. If you have missed past webinars that you think you might be interested in, all of them have been recorded and are now available on our website. So if you visit ontariobeef.com, you can find that there under programs, and they're also on our YouTube page. So feel free to go check those out. There's lots of cool information from past producers and industry stakeholders that you can gain to apply to your own operation and hopefully use in the future. As well, coming up this summer and early fall, the Canadian Beef Industry Conference is happening once again this year. It's happening virtually once again, and registration just opened today. So if you visit their website, you'll be able to register now, and there's lots of great new speakers and panels this year on the agenda. So I encourage you to go check that out and see if it's something you'd be interested in. As per usual, they have lots of different topics and a variety of different things that you can go and check out there. So I encourage you to go take a look. If you're interested in learning more about BFO and what we do, there's lots of different ways and places you can go to find out more. Obviously, you can visit our website. We have a weekly e-newsletter, the bulletin board, that you can register for on our website. Members receive our magazine 5 times a year, and as always, you can visit us on social media, lots of places on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. So with that, I'm going to pass it along to Jackie and allow her to talk a little bit more about herself and what she and her husband Steve do on their farm in regards to environmental stewardship, as well as things that they do in their community and working on their farm. So with that, I'm going to just invite her back here and move it along to her.
All right.
Jackie, I'm going to pass it along to you, and I think I just invited you to share your screen, so you should be able to do that now.
All right. See if I can get the technology to work.
Yep, I can see your screen there.
Yeah, just. Yeah. Good evening, everyone. I'm sorry I'm not so tech savvy here as I should be, but as Bethany introduced me, I'm Jackie Pemberton, and my husband Steve and I farm here in the east at Pemberton Road, Inkerman, Ontario. And if anyone's familiar with this area at all, we're just south of Ottawa. And if you're familiar with the Winchester Research University of Guelph Winchester Research Station and also Safida International, our land base sits right between those two locations. So we are a bit of our farming history. I'm just gonna close it. Sorry. So we farm with our parents, Con and Brenda, and We started off dairy. So I do not come from a farming background. I married a farmer, although I grew up rurally. We so I married a dairy farmer. My schooling is vet tech. I started off in Winchester at the vet clinic here and married my dairy farming husband. Um, we farmed for about 10 years with Steven's parents, and then in 1999 we purchased the land and the dairy operation as part of succession planning. Um, and in 2007, life had changed a bit. We had sold our cows and quota, and a lot of that drivers for that were we were a small operation. In that time frame, everyone was looking for economies of scale, larger operations, more efficiencies. It really looked to us major investments when we were unsure at the time with our children whether we would have succession ourselves. So we decided to get out of the dairy industry. Um, we did raise our registered Holstein replacements probably to about 2009, and today we cash crop to about 200 acres, hay, soybeans, and corn, and we operate a small cow calf beef operation. So just some pictures of our beef and some farming activities that we do. As you know, crop is usually our primary source of income. Our family life, as I said, we are proud parents of two daughters, Marley and Sierra. They have gone off to college, university, and are very independent women, and one lives in Kitchener and one lives in Ottawa. So farming is not on their radar at all. You would like to see your children, continue on, but everybody has their own choices in life, and we encourage them in the direction that they choose. A little bit of my background, as I indicated earlier, I started off as a vet tech in a veterinary clinic. And then when I had my first child, I was looking for part-time work and in a lab situation, and I was fortunate enough to get a job for Parmalat in Winchester, Ontario, which is the largest dairy processing facility that we have here in the East. Now it's called Lactalis, but so I was working in the lab there and was fortunate enough to garner some education and training and environmental law. And I worked my way up to being environmental manager for Parmalat for their site. So that meant looking after everything from air, water, noise, and ensuring that it met regulatory compliance. With certificates of approval that are required in regards to waste products. So I did that from 1999 to 2003. And then I took on a consulting role with the City of Ottawa and Parmalat to manage their land application of their biosolids program, and which was a really interesting project. So that's sort of my connection again back into the farming community, because most biosolids are land applied within the region on farmers' land as a nutrient source, organic nutrient source. I'm busy on committees. I sit on a lot, and that it didn't always start off that way. When I wanted to get involved in understanding agriculture or issues, it more sort of triggered with issues that farmers were facing. So if you remember around 1999, maybe some of you are that young that you don't remember, I don't know, the Walkerton issue happened. And then at that time, when I worked in industry, I knew the environmental regulations around an industry point of view, and I was concerned about how this would move forward because agriculture was deemed the blame for the Walkerton issue initially. And from that out of that came the Clean Water Act, the Nutrient Management Act, Source Water Protection Act. Those all came out of that issue, and I knew that agriculture needed to be at the table to ensure that those that are writing policy are familiar with the workings of how agriculture works, timings, and so on. So that's how I started. I joined my county federation, the Dundas Federation of Agriculture, and then over time, became president of the Dundas Federation of Agriculture for 13 years. And then had opportunity to sit on numerous committees, starting from my time in Parmalot, where I initially got on the source water, the South Nation conservation, because I represented a total phosphorus management program with Parmalot, and I enjoyed what they had to offer for agriculture with the Clean Water Program. So I ended up staying on representing ag, and I have been with South Nation Conservation as an ag rep and the chair of the Clean Water Committee for over 20 years. And we've seen, probably over a few $1 million put back into agriculture for non-point phosphorus. So things like milk house wastewater, barnyard runoffs, these are the type of projects, buffers, that the Clean Water Program does. So as you can see there, I'm also an advanced agricultural leadership program alumni, so class 14, and I also received the Richard Lichty Memorial Award in my time with ALP. So there's just a few committees that I sit in, and currently I'm in my second term as an OFA board director, and I am a beef farmers liaison within OFA. So I want to talk about one of the major projects that we did on the farm, and that's the constructed wetland. There was other little projects done prior to this, and I'll speak to that later. But as on the screen, you will see kind of a design layout of what the constructed wetland was. So before, when we were dairying, as with all dairy operations, you have to manage your nutrients. We were a semi-solid manure, and we had it wasn't covered, so there was some issues with barnyard runoff. And when we transitioned out of dairy, that problem didn't go away. We still had beef, and we wanted to ensure that we could manage that well. So in this, on the screen, you'll see a vegetated filter strip and a flow path. So OMAFRA has said that a natural flow path, a 150-meter flow path, is sufficient enough to manage barnyard runoff, but there has been no sort of science to say, well, that's the right length to have, and there was definitely no science on the size of constructed wetlands. So that's kind of what this project is focusing at. So on our site, they did two methods of managing through a controlled flow path. So there you'll see a header at the top, and the water was pumped and flowed down, and then the natural flow path was a side-by-side comparison was done. So these are just some pictures of the constructed wetlands. The one on the very bottom is how it looks today, taken from a lift. My husband was up on the other day and took a picture from high up. So and we used we installed high tensile fencing at the same time the wetland went in, just and we think it's the greatest fencing going. So, or my husband does too. So back to the constructed wetland, we had some partnerships with the Rural Ontario Wastewater and Farm and Food Care, along with Alice, South Nation Conservation. They help support this. So you can see in the bottom left is the manure pile and the exercise yard. The cattle are contained in that area throughout the winter months. And then we have pond 1, and on the other side of that is a wetland. So it's a gravity fed water system. So it flows from one through the wetland and then into a tertiary pond, so a third pond for further breakdown of nutrients. So I'm going to talk a little bit. Not only did we do the constructed wetland, we also did a lot of planning and prep for buffers, right? So I worked with Alice in regards to choosing the right type of buffers for on our property. We do cash crop. We don't want trees growing up and limbs having to break in the fields and for us to have to do all that cleanup. So there was a lot of discussion on the type of trees that would be planted there. And and this is just sort of how it was designed out. So the, things that we planted, and white spruce, bur oak, red osier dogwood, black elderberry, high bush cranberry, nannyberry, smooth arrowwood, black elderberry, serviceberry, black chokecherry, and sweet gale. So these are some of the pictures. Probably it's, this growth is about 5, 6 years now. On the two on the outer side, you can see the oak and you can see the spruce, as well as some serviceberry or high bush cranberries there. As with anything, you can get it to grow. You try your best to get it to grow where you want it to, and it doesn't always, right? So there is some effort in maintaining and replanting, and we had to do some infilling this spring. The last few years, we've seen a lot of, different springs where we've had dry and then wet and then dry. And so this has been a challenge to keep these trees, because they really do come in small when you plant them. So to keep them going. Other research we've done on farm, and I've just put some links in here. So the agricultural adaptation to climate change and other uncertainties was done by Carleton University. And, it was a workshop that was done in this area, sort of outreach to Dundas County through the Federation. And the idea was to collaborate with a community-based setting in order to gain insight into major drivers of agricultural change in Dundas County over the past 30 years or so, and looking at adaptation strategies used to cope with the change and what's the most likely forces of change the region will face in the next 30 years. So I did put some links there. The other one was a farmland biodiversity with Carleton University. Note the Ontario component in this Eastern Ontario. Our farm was the only North America area that was looked at, but the other regions, there was about 7 other regions in Europe that were involved in that project. And again, the links are there. Some of the challenges and successes. I think one of the biggest challenge we had was the transition out of dairy. It was a big decision to make, and heartbreaking in some cases, because we were pure-bred Holstein, and we had generations of genetics that we were saying goodbye to. So that was a big decision for us. And then being cattle people, my husband and my father-in-law being cattle men, always felt that the termination of livestock on farms sees more intensive cropping, because when the cattle are gone, you see the fence rows pulled out, and the grasslands are gone and turned into a crop. And it makes sense if that's the type of farming you want to do. But we felt it was important to keep biodiversity on the farm. We do like to see the different bird species. Yep, we harbor those endangered ones as well, and we do our best to make sure that our timings for cutting hay and stuff don't interfere with their breeding cycles. But so we do our best with that. But so we maintain pasture lands and hay as part of our crop rotation, and as we all know, that equals a good soil health. And what we were looking at is what were the best options and low costs for nutrient management on farm. So we didn't have to outlay a lot of cash on a big manure storage or a covered shed. We weren't going to increase our herd operation with the beef, but we were looking for ways to manage what we had in the best possible way. And the constructed wetland is a small footprint. The design itself sort of even proved that what OMAFRA design says is probably 11 times bigger than what it really needs to be to achieve the outcomes that we did, and that was up to 95% phosphorus removal. So it was a really good mechanism, easy maintenance. For the study purposes, there's a well and a pumping station and stuff like that to do the research. but on a daily operation, that equipment is not used. It's all gravity flow. So it was a great project to work with. So I guess that's me rambling on. I was just wondering if there's any questions or let's chat.
That's great. Thanks, Jackie. So I already have a few questions up here. For everybody else, if you're interested in asking any questions, there's a question box there for you. So feel free to type in any questions and I'll relay them on to Jackie. So some of the questions that I have all ready for you. The first one was, do you feel farmers are overregulated on environmental aspects, or we need to up our, I'm typing it here. Do we need to up our game?
I think farmers can feel overregulated because regulation and policy can be confusing and hard to interpret. But science has proven you know what you know now, and the implications if you're not managing your nutrients or you're not doing your spray applications correctly have big implications. And although we have to walk the talk, right? So sometimes I feel they're a lot, but I think they're a necessary tool with the science of today.
And then to kind of go along with that, there was another one here. Are there any particular environmental goals that you would like to see Ontario and Canadian beef farmers work more towards on their farms?
I think we need to, as beef farmers, again, we talk about grassland protection is key. We need to ensure that that aspect of our operations are well kept. Those would be, a pretty goal to ensure that you have that on farm. Being aware too, like I mean, some beef farmers are cash croppers too, right? So let's talk about buffers and ensuring that the separation distances and stuff from courses and stuff. Walk the talk, right? These are best management practices, and that's exactly what they are, just best management practices. They're not legislated yet, and as farmers, I don't think we want to see them legislated, right? So you need to give the public the view that you're doing the best management practices.
Good. And actually, there's two that are kind of the same, but they are different. So you work with the South Nation conservation authorities and obviously quite closely. And some farmers obviously have a hesitancy to work closely with conservation areas. And to go along with that, the question is, could you comment on the power conservation authorities have over farm practices? And do you think there's a reason that farmers should be concerned about any sort of like repercussions of working with their conservation authorities and what it might lead to further down the line?
I know there is across the province the CAs, the conservation authorities, vary in how they work with their landowners. I can only speak to South Nation in their approach to working with landowners is definitely carrot rather than stick. And they are very supportive in their committees in the design and the makeup to ensure that farmers are included in programs, right? Whether it be forestry or the clean water program. These have agricultural representatives at the table. So we're there sort of guiding the programs on the need, trying to understand the need of the CA, right? They have objectives as well, and then sort of saying, well, where agriculture can fit in there and where we can support each other. in my experience, I'm also like I do site visits for the Clean Water Program as well. So when a farmer is looking for funding or a landowner is looking for funding, they would contact the Conservation Authority, and then they would do a peer-to-peer site visits. So that's myself, as a farmer, understanding the challenges, the issues that we have in agriculture and the lingo, going out to the farm and talking to the landowner and explaining the project. I'm, pretty much filling out the application for them, um, and providing as much insight as I can without, designing. I'm not responsible for design or construction, but, a resource on where they can get the materials that they need. Um, you know, I, I would encourage anyone who's interested in shaping their conservation authority. There's opportunity coming up with the conservation changes within the Conservation Act to sit on committees as an ag rep, and also contact your CA to see if you can attend meetings. All meetings are open to the public. So, the best way to make change is get involved.
Yeah, so it's a great example of opening doors and building bridges and those sorts of things. And as you
Mhm.
said, get on those committees, because the more you work with them, then the better it's going to be, and the more peer-to-peer work that you'll be able to do. Yeah,
Exactly. Thank you.
yeah. Um, this is a nice quick question for you. Can you estimate the annual precipitation your farm sees?
Whew, I can't. I'd have to look that up
Okay, yep,
for
yep.
for our region. Off the top of my head, I can't.
Nope, that's good. Another question here regarding succession and today's high real estate values. How do farmers set up succession to allow next generation entry to the farm?
Um, I'm definitely going to say that you need support in doing so. Everyone in every family dynamic is different. Everyone's wants and needs are totally, or expectations are totally different. If you're no OFA member, there's opportunity to seek support through the members' benefits for succession planning too. But I encourage you to seek support to make sure that everybody has a chance to voice what they want or what they would like to see. Um, it is a challenge with land values, but in our case, we were very fortunate. Stephen is an only child, so there was no other siblings or to go uh, dance around, or to receive. Sometimes there's one member that works in the on farm and another doesn't, and so there's sweat equity in the one that that works on the farm, but the child that doesn't, still feels entitled to some remuneration type things. So it is challenging. It's hard. But the best way is start the conversations, right? Set some goals, set some timelines, right? Because I have worked with some farmers that have talked about transition for years, and then the family members now in their 50s and 60s themselves, and their goals and their views and how they want to see the farm move forward has lessened, right? So, I really do encourage you to seek support to do it. It's not something that's done alone, but definitely something that's worth doing.
For sure. Um, in regards to, you've done some research on your farm to work with the different universities and the research programs. How did you establish these connections with these researchers and these projects?
Well, as I said earlier, I do sit on a lot of committees, right? So the Carleton University was, just through somebody who knew that I was a county federation president, and they reached out to me. Um, there were, yeah. So it was just, different presentations, different people that I've met on committees doing other presentations, that I've said, hey, I have this project or this idea, where will it fit in? And just letting them know that you're interested. I'm sure there's opportunities just to reach out to, any environmental science program within any colleges or universities near you to let them know that you're interested in or a willing participant in any research opportunities.
Yeah. Networking. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Like if it wasn't for the networks that I've created, perhaps this wouldn't happen. Like the clean water program, I'd seen some constructed wetland projects go through for a dairy operation, so I knew it was doable. But it'd never been done for beef. So I was reaching out to that researcher and saying, hey, would you like to maybe consider doing something for beef? And then sort of with the knowledge base that I have, that I knew the science around the nutrient management and the flow paths was, best guess. So, let's put some science behind it. So, yeah.
And this kind of actually flows into the next two questions that are pretty similar. What prompts you to kind of try these new ideas and research ideas to try on your farm? And where do you reach out to find these new ideas and education that allows you to expand your knowledge? So I'm
Um,
guessing a lot of that is networking committees, but is there anything else that kind of pushes you on or prompts you?
I'm, I've always, my husband hates me when I say this. Don't tell me how I can't, tell me how I can, right? And that's kind of a motto of mine. So when I'm looking at something that is challenging, right, I'm looking for ways on how I can, and I don't want to hear that can't, right? So then I do a bit of research, and you know, you have the internet today. There's great resources within OMAFRA themselves, the University of Guelph, your CAs. There's a multitude of resources out there.
Yeah, well, that's good. And another question that kind of goes along with that, what are some of the challenges you have faced when trying to undertake some of those projects? So I know you kind of went over that a bit, but are there any like specific ones, I guess, that you faced that
Convincing
you've had
my,
to undertake?
the biggest challenge I have is convincing my farmer husband that this is going to work.
Change, right? Change is hard.
Change is difficult, and you have to remember we're generational farming. My father-in-law is still here, comes to the farm every day to check on things. He's 81, and he still works side by side with my husband, in the field and with the cattle, and allows us to get away too. So I have two generations that I have to convince that this is going to work. Right, or this is the way to go. So I guess it was really funny, but that's my biggest challenge is convincing my husband that this is a great idea.
Yeah. Another question here, got some good questions. With such high cash crop competition, how do we minimize land conversion from beef to crop?
Oh, that is a question that, yeah, that is a good question. You know, I- Markets, increased markets, the value, getting the understanding out there, the value of grasslands and that crop rotation. Um, you know, uh,
If you
it
can
is a
come up with the
challenge.
answer to that, you're going to be a millionaire.
Yeah, I would. Like, it is hard, right? And let's face it, working around cattle is not easy work. It can be dangerous work. My husband tore his rotator cuff working around the beef a couple winters ago. So, you know, it, but it's the love of the animals. It's the biggest joy for us in the spring to see those calves on the ground and healthy moms and healthy calves. We have cattle, even though it's not our primary income, because we love the cattle, right? Um, so I think there has to be a bit of passion there. Um, but it is, in this world we live in, it's follow the money, right? So, money isn't everything.
Yeah. But I think you did make a good point there at the beginning, though, to really bring up the point more and more about the importance of grasslands and pasture lands. And right this evening when we're talking about environmental stewardship, to more and more bring to light, because that's what people are talking about. And
Mhm.
if we can really drive that point home, I think that that's going to help us in the long run. So I think that was a good point there. Yeah, for sure.
Bethany, I think too that this past 18 months have sort of given a homegrown flair out there. So I think there's opportunities to grow the market. We've seen that on some market growth and smaller operations starting up. I don't know if others in their area are seeing, smaller acreage, having a few head of cattle. Um, which is good. I think it's good, but you know, a cautionary tale is that those that are getting 5 and 6 beef and only having 2 acres of land can be a challenge for nutrients, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
then if they're not familiar with the requirements to manage those nutrients, it could be detrimental to their land base, the neighbor's well, type thing. So, we want um, the cattle in the right place, right? For growth, that's for sure.
that's right. Yeah, exactly. Um, Good question here. Who do you get to design your wetlands when it comes to that? Is it um, ALUS? Is it the conservation areas? Do you all work together?
So the actual design on the wetlands is done by Ontario Rural Wastewater Centre. Now, it was a component of the University of Guelph at Alfred campus when Guelph owned the Alfred campus. But so that transitioned out once University of Guelph had sold the land base and the dairy facility at Kempville and also Alfred. So Chris Kingsley, and if anybody's interested in doing this and need a contact, surely reach out to me. I'm sure I can find the contacts you need in your region, or I'll do my best to try. But Chris Kingsley is now with the University of Ottawa, and he does the Ontario Rural Wastewater Centre. So it's not just he's looked at wetlands for pulp and paper, for dairy processing, for so there's different avenues that this design has been worked on. So yeah, so the actual design came through the Ontario Rural Wastewater Centre. Alice and the Conservation Authority were not involved in design and construction. They were more supportive in the buffers and supplying the trees and those type of partnerships as well, and farm and food care as well for the actual wastewater
Okay.
part.
Yeah. Um, is there any advice that you would give to those looking to implement environmental projects on farm, where they should look for funding, areas they should avoid possibly? Yeah.
Hmm. Um, start within your community, right? So, take a look at your conservation authority. Do they have a clean water program, right? Take a look at the ALICE programs, right? If you're looking to, take some marginal land out, or you want to create buffers along a water course, so those offer some programs there. I've seen less and less through the CAP, the federal funding in regards to environment. They used to do manure storages and barnyard runoffs and stuff, but that's sort of gone by the wayside for them. They're looking for research, innovation. So if you're looking for something new to do, that's maybe where you'll get funding. But start at home. Take a look at see what your CAs have to offer, and Alice, and yeah, that would, and other partners, right?
Hmm. Yeah. No, that's great advice.
Mhm.
That looks like all the questions I currently. Did you have something else to say there?
Oh, I was just going to say, thinking of other partners, right? As I indicated earlier, that we had the high tensile fence put up. That was just a conversation with Gallagher. They had no bee farmers in our area that had installed high tensile. So they actually gave me a break on the cost of the high tensile to be part of this project, right? To promote high tensile fencing. So just those are the type of partners you're looking at.
Yeah, no, that's good. Always looking for the different partnerships that might be available that aren't necessarily
Hmm.
what you think, because you don't necessarily think of Gallagher as like a environmental project partner exactly, but
Yeah, but
potentially.
if you're
Yeah,
fencing out a water course, or if you're using solar panel for watering systems,
yeah,
within your project, right? Everybody's looking for some ways to promote what they have and what they do, and what better way through environmental stewardship.
exactly. Yeah, nope, that's a perfect example. I don't seem to have any more questions here, Jackie, but let's see if any more pop up here. But while we're waiting, I'd just like to say thank you. This is an awesome presentation with lots of great questions that came through asking you. So definitely gained a lot of information from that. And look forward to hearing more from you and hearing what you have to say, and as well seeing you at CBIC and representing Ontario with the Ontario TESA winner. So that's going to be another exciting place we get to see you in August. So that
Hmm.
will be exciting as well. So thanks again for taking the time out this evening. That's awesome.
Well, thank you for having me, and I hope I was able to give some insight or enlighten those. I do want to give a shout out to the Dundas Cattlemen's who actually nominated me for this TESA award. So I want to shout out to them for a big thanks for that. Um,
Yeah,
you know, some,
absolutely.
sometimes the things that we do on farm we don't see as relevant. They're just little things, and when you put them all together, they can be big and they can be meaningful. So I appreciate their support and the nomination.
Yep, absolutely. Fantastic. Well, looks like we don't have any more questions coming in. So with that, I'll say a final thank you, and thank you to everyone that came out and joined us tonight. And hopefully you all learned a little bit something that you can take back. And hopefully everybody has a good evening. Thank you for joining us.
And thank you.